Bonjour messieurs dames, bienvenue en France. I'm only joking, I'm going to do it in English. Obviously, visas, residency, I'm going to try and make it as entertaining as possible because, well, it's probably stressful for you guys to consider that. Before I begin, it would always sort of lovely to find out how many of you guys are looking to plan to move to France permanently. If you could put your hands up, perhaps. Pretty much quite a good crew. Second homeowners, so you perhaps already... Okay, so I'll try and cater for both. Any EU citizens here today? Just a few. Irish passports perhaps, Guinness being delivered to your door every day, it's fantastic. Okay, so before I begin, I will apologise because I actually ban PowerPoints in my company. I take inspiration from a great leader of Amazon who also does the same. I think it's quite difficult for me to deliver all of this information to you today, and I probably won't be able to give you everything in the actual seminar, if you like. But of course, be more than welcome to chat to you on our stand number 41, and just next to our partner French Insurance. But you can also book an online consultation with me if you would like to discuss in more detail. Before we carry on, why French Connections HCB? Well, I was born in France. I grew up in France. I am actually French, as well as being, as you can hear, British. I started off speaking French because many people in this industry are not French, and they're helping English speakers move to France, which was a bit of an irony in my context because I was recruited and worked with big corporate companies for pretty much all of my life. And actually, notably, I was recruited by American companies to actually infiltrate the French market. They'd noticed that French people wouldn't do business with non-French people. It's not to say that the French are not welcoming, they're extremely welcoming. But for things like admin, you really need to know your stuff, and no matter how good you are potentially at French, they might not consider you in the same way. So the key thing is, for me, I am French, but I also understand the English, the American, the Australian cultures, and I try to bridge the gap. So, in context, what we offer is a unique service that is an all-inclusive package to be able to move and stay permanently in France. How I do that is I surrounded myself with a barrister that I employ full-time and a group of paralegals. The reason being is that we found that doing these applications are extremely stressful, quite difficult to do on your own, but also for those that have had the joys to work with lawyers, if there are any lawyers in the room, I do apologise, or accountants, they're not very responsive. They don't really understand the B2C kind of the stress, the fact that this is going to be a really difficult time for you. There's a lot going on, right? You're buying a house potentially, you're moving country, you're liquidating all of your assets, you've got all of these things to think about. And of course, you want support around this process. So in context, I've worked for the biggest, probably best companies in the world. So I stole all of their ideas in terms of remote working before it was a thing, how to better the technology and improve the service. And in fact, I didn't even look at the marketplace. I didn't realize all of this existed when I created the business. I actually had the idea for this when I was 18 years old, studying in France, and people kept coming to me and asking me for services. Ironically, you'll laugh, but my father and my parents moved to France 40 years ago, so I'm 35, soon 36 years old. But when they moved, they didn't make much effort to learn French, and I just spoke English at home. And so I did all of their affairs from a very, very young age. More importantly, and specifically, my father restored classic cars. Right? You're thinking, why the hell is he talking about cars in this context, talking about visas? But actually, I became the specialist in vehicle registrations in France when I relaunched the company 5 years ago. That catapulted us into a multi-million-pound business that actually now employs 30 people plus UK, France, and USA combined? Well, cars, people, same kind of thing. Really, honestly, it's actually the same logic between importing a vehicle to importing yourself in the context. And in French administrative kind of processes, there's actually a very clear theme that one thing must happen before the other. The problem is that many entities don't function or work together. So you'll have, for instance, the tax office that does one job, the Caisse Primaire d'Assurance Maladie, or the equivalent to the NHS, that does another, and then the visa offices and the prefectures that kind of should all work together, and if you ask them for information, should be able to deliver that, but they don't seem to know. So one will tell you to do one thing and one to do the other. So today what we offer is, of course, a platform to be able to move to France. We do that with using the best technology available, but we also do that with an approach which allows you to have complete confidence in what we do. In fact, we're the only company that offers delivered goods, reapplication, or money-back guarantees on all of our services. I'm going to actually talk to you now about moving to France beyond 90 days, right? So you all know it, and if you don't, you've got 90 days as British passport holders in France. Then you've got to come out of the Schengen zone, and then you can go back after another 90 days. For those that want to stay on that plan as second homeowners, you can totally do so. In fact, we have a lovely calculator on our website that allows you to put multiple dates in there. I know it's not cutting edge, but actually there was nothing else available. So you can do that for us. For people that may not look to do the full package of services that we offer, we do things like open bank accounts, etc., straight through our portal with the biggest bank in France. So again, I just wanted to introduce technology to what is quite an old marketplace, clearly, that I didn't even know existed. The aim really in talking to you about the visa process is to give you here the notion that in the UK, at least, you're going to have to cope with a company which is called TNS. TNS subcontracted by the French government to help you with your applications, help you as a large firm, but to be fair, they do a good job. They do it, of course, for other countries as well. There are 3 centres in the UK, London, Edinburgh, and Manchester. I would probably recommend London because the consulate is in London, French consulate that being, and so therefore the turnaround for your passport, which will be taken off you, will be slightly faster if you do it from London, just from a geographical point of view. And in short terms, visas are pretty much all the same, and genuinely they're very much like car registration. You've got to look at a visa application based on your personal circumstances, but there are 3 main pillars of an application. Income. Most of you liquidating your assets or buying a second home are probably not going to have an income issue, at least at first. If you spend a lot of money on rosé and restoring the house, or maybe both in whichever order, it might become slightly more an issue at renewal, but for the first stage it really isn't. That income requirement is €1,389 per month net, which is the French minimum wage. That could be times 12 a bank account. It doesn't have to be regular income, it could just be sat there. My maths are terrible, about €17,000, slightly reduced if you're a couple, 20% more if you have dependents. But all the French want to do is make sure that you've got enough money to live. Really, quite sensible, I guess. That would be for the 6-month visa, which you could apply for, or indeed the 12-month visa that you can apply for, but there's actually also still a 3- and 4-month visa term. The reason you'd apply for a visa, of course, for those that want to permanently stay, is to be able to renew it in France, right? So that is going to be something that's key. For the lucky Europeans in the room, or married to Europeans, I would actually take the opportunity to do this as quickly as possible. But as a European, you can register and you're automatically granted residency, of course, in France. And if you're married, your partner can apply in France for an EU spouse visa, which is automatically taking you to stage 2, which is carte de séjour. So happy days. For you non-European married, and of course most of you today, you're going to have to choose that visa. To be clear, there are only 2 types of visas that are renewable in France. Only 2 types. So there's loads of other types, but only 2 that are renewable. The long stay visa. Long stay renewable visa, because a 12-month visa can be not renewable. So they really make this as simple as Frenchly possible, right? Or what they call a talent passport visa. Within that talent passport, they regroup loads of different categories. It could be because you've got a unique skill, it could be because you're an entrepreneur and you're going to invest into a French company, it could be that you're an investor and you're going to invest 300,000 euros, for instance, in France. Be careful with that one though, because I know that you've all been watching Dick and Angel far too much. And I'm sure a few of you are thinking about doing gîtes and so forth. But being a business owner and running 8 companies in France, 1 in the UK and 1 in the USA, I can tell you it's very difficult to pay yourself minimum wage, especially in France, because it will cost you 48% more than what you pay yourself. So as a business move, it's maybe not the best strategy is to go out there straight away and create your business. And in fact, many people that use law specialised firms, etc., to do this application, well, don't see the bigger picture. And that means that you've got 4 years on this visa, that's the positive, but you've got 4 years to create and maintain your business and show that you're earning minimum wage. Now, I'm guessing it's early retirement or retirement that you're considering, or a lifestyle change, right? That's exactly what I did when I moved back to France. So adding that stress of management, having to have a French accountant, which by the way are super expensive, not because they're greedy, just because it's really difficult to run those businesses. To give you an idea, business turning over €1 million in France and one exactly the same in the UK, in one country cost me about £2,000 maximum to do everything. In France it would cost me €7,500 a year just to do that. So the same level of work, nearly 3 times as much. So going on that business visa, or what we would call a talent passport visa, because you're creating a gîte, if you don't need to work within the first year, probably I would advise you going on to the other side, which is a long stay visitor visa. Don't be fooled by the visitor. It's also retirement. They've kind of simplified and packaged it in. It could also be because you're married to a French national and you're going to meet them, by the way. Hence why the Europeans are lucky, because it's easier to move to France married to a European than it is to move to France married to a French person. I think they're going to change that pretty soon, but for now it's all good. Don't forget that what I'm giving you in terms of advice today is maybe not applicable in the future, because it's a political tool, changes happen. Notably, you've all heard, I'm sure, about the 180-day ruling, what was going to happen, etc. I'm glad to see that if you've been following me on YouTube, if you don't, like and subscribe, don't forget we're also on there, of course. But I mentioned that I don't like to get involved in politics, but I think in today's day and age that we live in, it would have been too complex for the French to say, well, it's okay for the British to stay, not the Americans, not the Canadians, not, yeah, so I think that was always going to be rejected, if I'm honest. Equally, the 100-Year War, Azincourt, you know, all of that kind of stuff doesn't really play in our favour, right? So, in context, I think that today, for an awful lot of you, the long stay visitor visa is going to be a great option. It's going to be a great option because it's flexible. You can renew it, of course, in France. You're going to be able to change your status after 10 months. So what happens in context, right? Really what happens is, it really bugs me that for years and years and years of doing this now, or 5 years in total, you know, there was an evolution here. What I wanted to create, I knew what I wanted to create, I'm still working on it, which is the most inclusive package possible to move to France. I want to make it easy. We live in a lovely world that's so convenient these days. At the tip of our fingers, we can order anything on Amazon, and it's even maybe delivered the same day, right? You can order a cab within seconds with Uber. We've got everything at the fingertips, but yet this industry and this particular thing to move to France has always been made very difficult, so we try to simplify it. In that simplification, these are the requirements. As I mentioned, healthcare, yeah? Biggest reason for rejection on a visa. So if you're going to do anything more than 6 months, you're going to have private healthcare coverage or an S1 form and activate it. Issue with that, guys, is that if you activate the S1, then you actually temporarily signing yourself out of the NHS, and that would mean that you would have to be of retirement age. Of course, that's not the case of everyone in the room today, but equally, hey, you might want to come back to your dentist in Bath or in London or from wherever else you come from in the UK. You might also not get registered with a doctor quick enough in France, and you might want to speak with an English doctor, the one that you've been going and seeing for years. So staying in the NHS is probably advisable if you can afford the private medical care coverage, which is mandatory for the visa long stay renewable application, which is the only one, I repeat, that really is going to be suitable for a lot of you guys today. Included in that, you're going to have a valid passport, all of these bits and bobs that are quite readily available on the internet. One thing you've got to consider is that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I'm just a business guy. But I'm surrounded with extreme amounts of good advice and people that do that, and I have an avocat à la Cour de Toulouse, Anaïs Pinson, that supports all of my team. We have 5 paralegals that work on your files, and the great news that I have today is last year on 1,750 applications processed for our business, we had 1 rejection in Beijing, China, so hopefully you'll grant me that one. Alright? I actually solutioned the problem for the gentleman. He was married to a German national, so that was all good. But in context, we care an awful lot about this. And I care an awful lot in the context of the third point of this application often gets me in trouble online, because I say you need to purchase your property or to have what we call a long stay, or not a long stay, a rental contract, which is a permanent rental contract. Now in France, there's only 2 types of rental contracts, 12 months or 36 months. They both have the same ruling. They give power to the tenant. I learned this the hard way. I was fortunate enough to be able to invest in property in France before I quit my real job and took this role on. And I'm a tenant. I'm a landlord, and I have tenants. And even if I buy a property, if there's a tenant in there, I can't kick them out. So the notion of safe place to live, which is the third pillar of the application, means that you need to have either completed on your property, so you actually own that property, or you've got a 12-month or more rental contract. Doesn't mean you need to stay there for 12 months. It just means that you've got a contract where somebody can not kick you out. You could be a billionaire, and I wish we had some in the room, but even though you have a 12-month booking in the nicest hotel in Paris, 12 months and 1 day in, when you're meant to be renewed, if every single hotel room in B&B were booked out, you've got nowhere safe to live. So, in context, what is really important to understand is on that 100% success rate that we have, if you want to do this application on your own, make sure that you've got somewhere safe to live. If you're going for a 6-month application, an Airbnb booking will be fine. And yes, sometimes you might have heard somebody's gone through and had a 3-month, Airbnb and actually got a long stay visitor visa. They might not actually be able to renew it, but that's another story. But the context is, yes, sometimes it goes through the loop. And with my business, I need to make sure that you are successful, our reputation, but also your money paid for our service is of course delivered back to you if we're not successful. So really, you're going to do this on your own. And by the way, everything that we do and offer in terms of services are free. You can all do everything that we offer, you can do it on your own. You'd only come to us to take the pain away and have accountability, I guess, as well. But in context, those are those 3 pillars for that visa application. They're actually the same pillars for any visa application in France. They're going to be the same pillars of application for your change of visa into what people refer to online as residency. Probably heard this term. It's actually called a carte de séjour. A carte de séjour is not really residency, but people seem to refer to it as residency. It's a more permanent visa, right? And that happens after, sorry, gone too far. That happens 10 months after your visa's been validated. So, you go to London, you set your appointment, you come with your 3 pillars and you've prepared all your documentation. Of course, in the case you're working with us, we do all of that for you and we prepare you for the appointment. But in context, you're going to get your passport taken off you. You're going to wait maybe 7-10 days and you'll get your passport back. You won't know until you get your passport back what's out there. It's like playing the lottery, it's great. You get really stressed about it, you can imagine. We do this all over the world, right? So people are doing this all over the world every week. We have about 5 people every week move to France. So, you know, we are literally industry leaders in the marketplace, and that only in 5 years. Clearly, just because there wasn't really a service out there that would provide, you know, the security that you need when you're moving. So, yeah, we've done a good job, but we're still really working on that. But the main part is you're not going to know. You get your visa, you get your passport back. It actually is a page in your passport. Happy days. You've got the right type. Off you go, right? You arrive in France. You're going to get a stamp on your passport where the visa is, and you'll have to validate your visa. That visa validation is actually online these days. People say it's at the prefecture. It's not. So many people are completely up to date with the actual information because it's moving all like we are in the UK to online platforms. That's great when they work. Quite often governments run out of money, don't develop the products or services all of that well, and it becomes difficult, right? We've all experienced that, DVLA, gov.co.uk, P60s, blah, you name it. It's meant to make your life easy. It becomes quite complex in certain cases, and the French are certainly up there with it. And in context to that, of course, you will have this visa now validated. Let's say that you've managed to do it, you've done your online validation, you've now got 10 months before you can book an appointment at your local prefecture. Now, clarification on the rental contract. For those that have a rental contract and then leave the rental, so you get a 12-month rental, you leave it because you rented in Nice and you're buying now in Bayonne, let's say. The west coast of France is lovely, a bit biased. But the point being is that you get to that stage, well, you'll actually have to go back to where you actually validated and registered the visa in the first place for the renewal. So that's very important in terms of knowledge. You have to go back to that place. This time, on est en France. Et là, Brits in the past maybe didn't behave quite as they should, so they're going to be a bit more difficult. The visa application that everybody's scared of is actually not all of that daunting compared to the renewal. The renewal now is in France, a French agent of the state, a French person, maybe doesn't deal with many British people, but often, or those that didn't pay their tax bills, or drive big Range Rovers, or fast cars, and they're driving their Clio, you parked on double yellow and haven't paid your speeding fine, you can imagine that there is a little bit of complexity there. And so our solution is just to help you throughout, make you the most compliant possible. There's no secret to what I do. The way that we do it is we deliver it in a very simple and easy source with really great French people working in my team. I can't employ, unfortunately, international people. They have to be French because French people fall out with one another, and it's okay. If we fall out, we'll never talk to each other again. The French people, they'll have a proper argument on the phone. No, that's not the way it should happen. And then it's okay, I can French bash, I'm also a French passport holder. But the point being is that with our team, we're going to help you get all of these things right before that renewal. But if you're not using our service, just make sure that you've done as much as you can to become French in that first 10 months. The good news is, so what does that look like? You know, registering for tax, getting a tax return done, changing your driver's license, even if it's not mandatory, getting a letter from your mayor saying that you only drink French wine now these days, and that, you know, it is only French cheese, and you've given up cheddar forever, and Marmite, and all of those things. You're not eating any of that anymore. It is truly French, but you've also integrated the French social system, right? For those that want to remain on the NHS, and earn a bit of money. Well done, guys. It's hard work to earn money. But you're also going to have to pay some social charges in France, even if you don't work. That will be based on your worldwide income. Also, for those that are lucky to have high net worth real estate in the UK, it's quite easy. By the 1960s, it's all gone up to over $1 million. No mortgage on that. If you buy a nice fancy house, which isn't very expensive in France, let's face it, it's the appeal, $500,000. Well, be careful, because if you've got over 1.3 million really, that's when it starts hitting you and you're subject to IFI, impôt sur la fortune immobilière, as well as all of the other taxes that we love. Equalité, yeah? So it's like having money in cash is actually okay, but having money in real estate is a bit of an issue. So we have solutions with that. I work with the largest bank in France, moving on quickly to our partners. These are the people that we trust, only companies that I personally work with. If you go and check us out on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I also build bespoke properties for people. Not me, my best friend, since I was 1 year old, he became a builder. I went to travel the world, and he manages our construction business. But within that, what that means is that we actually choose these people so that you also, as part of your relocation, it's not just the visa, it's things that you're going to need, like a bank account, private banking potentially, to reduce your wealth tax. Great news is, in France, banking is like private banking. In the UK, you always get an advisor. These days, you can't even go to the bank in the UK, right? You don't have somebody you can speak to. In France, that's not the case. There's no credit scoring in France either. So it's a whole different world. There's a different world, cultural world, that we maybe don't realise into what we've actually fallen in love with when we move to that country, or when we aspire to move, like you guys today, to that country. We're going to be able to work all of those things around and then get you ready for that visa renewal, which is called a carte de séjour. Again, that carte de séjour happens in that French prefecture. Once you've got all your ducks in a row, you're going to go to the appointment. It might be late, yeah, because they forget about you, because you care. French people, especially in the southwest of France, we don't really care, especially if the laws come from Paris. But yeah, I mean, we might listen to it, send us enough red letters, we might do something about it. But of course, as Brits, yeah, we queue, we say please and thank you, we let people pass the cars, and we wave to say thank you to each other. In France, there's, you know, a bit more laissez-vivre, you know, the idea of, you know, nothing is too important. Of course, you're stressed about it, they're not. They say, oh, he's okay, we'll give him a carte de séjour. But of course, this is a really stressful part of your renewal, because if you don't get the carte de séjour, you can't stay in France. Gone, back to visa. So the carte de séjour, although you can book that appointment after 10 months, will actually quite often be over your visa is passed before you actually sit the appointment. There's no language test, albeit they won't speak English. So with our service, we help you over the phone and make sure that the file is ready, we prepare you for all of these kind of things. But again, all of this is possible and you can do it on your own. You don't necessarily need us in that context to do it, right? The point being with the service that we provide is I only select the best people to work with, and we do the majority of our work in-house, because problem with France, customer service, you'll say customer service in the UK isn't great, but it actually is pretty good. And in France, I don't say people don't care, but there's less competition, shall we say, in between businesses, in between level of service, and especially the French government. It's free. They don't care. If they lose your file, sorry, do it again. And of course, within all of these processes, your healthcare integration is going to be one that I wish we didn't have to do, but nobody else does it well, so we've had to do it. That is going to be another part of your life in France. You're going to need to get a carte vitale, which is the equivalent of an NHS card, I guess. Except the NHS in France is only 70% really of the value that they think is worth for the service. Good news is everything is private. But you'll then have to have a top-up, and that will be mandatory for your renewal. So because you're a foreigner, you'll have to have your social security number, same as in the UK. Once you get that, you'll pay social charges. Once you earn more than 36,400 euros as a couple, you'll pay 8.2% social charges on your net global income. Great news for you guys, as long as you don't have a business registered in the Cayman Islands. Maybe that would be good news. You'll have a dual tax situation. So, dual taxation since 1963, there's loads of other people that talk about tax and stuff, and I find it all incredibly boring. I just don't want to pay, I do want to pay taxes, but the minimum possible. The point being is that the idea is that you will have a dual taxation regime, but you will pay social charges on your global income unless you have registered an S1 form. Yeah? So, past 36,400 euros as a couple, you will be asked to pay 8.2% of your net world revenue in social charges in France. You won't, however, be double taxed. So money that you earn in the UK or anywhere else with a dual taxation treaty, as long as you keep being paid in that country and transfer from your personal account to your personal account, all you have to do is tell the French that you're earning that money, and you need to tell the British that you're earning money in France, if you do earn money in France, and then everybody's happy. You hope. Honestly, it's a very common thing. Most people have a dual taxation treaty, of course, if they're moving and receiving pensions and things like that. But of course, you do have to consider inheritance laws as well. Now, all of this is really important. It's not my kettle, you know, it's not really even what we do, but we've been forced to do it because the more you can show that you're compliant, the higher your chances are for success of renewal. Again, you can just hand it all over to us and we'll do a great job of it. Or we'll give you money. But the context will be that the more you become compliant, and tax is a big one. Tax is a really, really big one. Willy Wonka's golden ticket to proof of income when you come to your renewal of your visa is a French tax return. So if you can get one of those done, you can show that you're becoming compliant. That's my other top tip. All right, so top tips for the renewal: make sure that you show that you've integrated as much as you can. Think of it as, best way I can describe it, think of it as a mortgage application. Think of the French government as a bank. You know, when you apply for a loan or a mortgage, your bank manager will only accept things with certain documents, certain things that are, you know, with your address on it, with certain bits of information, pay slips, not just a bank statement, or bank statement with your address on it. Well, picture that the French government can only really, that bank that be the French, can only really understand and compute French documents. So the more French documents that you provide to them, the more established you look, and they're also going to think, hey, they're not going anywhere. They've got everything there, they've got everything registered, and they're fully compliant, as so many people won't. So, in context, that is just my advice to all of the things that I would consider extremely important in terms of your relocation to France. So, your visa application, the three pillars that are required again. Why choose us? Well, thousands of people literally each year. I think we had 4,000 people last year move or renew their visas in France. 100% success rate. We genuinely care. We want to make this as easy as possible for you with the best services available. And of course, don't just take my word for it. Check us out. Don't forget the likes. Don't forget to subscribe. But in context, you can find us everywhere. I try to preach the good word, like Jesus, I guess, or something along those words, that it is not impossible to move. Brexit has made it more challenging. There are perhaps more things to consider than just the visa. If you have been watching too much Dick and Angel, please stop. No, I'm only joking, guys. It's a great show. I actually did that. I moved from the UK back to France, bought a massive house, and then realised I didn't have enough time to cut the grass. All considered how expensive these lawnmowers were. Prices are racket. Anyway, they always break down. But my point being is that when you're thinking about doing a gîte and all of those kind of things, don't rush into it. Potentially take 10 months to set up your business, establish it, get a good business plan and change your status further down the line. Don't go and rush into a business plan and a talent passport application because they're the most rejected types. And my final kind of tip really is that today France are toughening the entry points. 35,000 English speakers arrive every year in France. About 10,000 leave. I only deal with 2,000 new ones a year, so we've got plenty of growth. Watch this space, we'll make it better and better. We'll try to. But the point being is that in context, they are making it harder. So, especially around income sourcing, etc. So if I can give you any advice, that is make it as simple as possible when you're going down these routes. Of course, again, if you don't want to bother with any of that, come and visit us. Go onto our website, book an appointment with my good self. I deal with every single client, prospective client. Why? Because even though I'm not a lawyer, an accountant, barrister, I deal with an awful lot of this. I've had all of these problems myself, and I like to be able to guide and steer. I'm just a pretty face. I will then hand you over to an account manager that will manage your file and my team. But we do genuinely care about every single one of our clients. So we've built a superb platform. I think it's cutting edge for the industry. You have everything online with us. You can log in, you can check all of your applications. I know it seems silly, but you can't do that, really, if you use the government platforms. So we make it easy to collect your data, keep it, and of course use other services with us moving forward. But if you are going to do this on your own, make sure you get things as simple as possible for the application itself. Again, the visa is actually quite easy. The visa, honestly, is actually quite easy. It's then 10 months flies by, and French application processes are super complex. You know, they take a while. And to be fair, things take a while in the UK. You're going to ask for a new passport, a driving license exchange. You know, there's a processing time, of course, to all of those things. So it's not just French people in particular, or French admin, that makes it difficult. Ironically, I think after Brexit, the UK government hired a French company to come and do the paperwork for Brexit, which was kind of funny. But I think the French actually do it very well. What you will find is if you do this yourself, the problem that you'll encounter is that very few people are used to dealing with this in the various regions or areas that you're looking potentially to move to. So there's a lot of conflicting advice. There's a lot of conflicting advice online as well, because people are trying to fearmonger into sales. They're trying to scare you to buy stuff, to buy, you know, legal advice, all of these kind of things, and it's happening an awful lot. They're also sometimes trying to make it sound too easy, you know, buy the house, worry about that later. But there's also an awful lot of tricks in France. You can avoid inheritance tax ruling completely, pretty much, by doing a gift whilst you're alive, as long as you've purchased the property through a business. Yeah, I didn't know that. I bought 10 houses, not for a lot of money, guys. 40 grand I was buying these properties for back 6 years ago. But nobody ever told me that, so I learned the hard way. But then I had to pay to change all of the statuses to be able to do gifts or to plan my estate worth, etc. So again, all of this planning is super, super important, and it fills into all of the requirements for the visa application. I hope it wasn't something I said. But in context, I think I'll be more than happy. Of course, it's usually difficult. I'd have a rolling mic, and I'd ask you all if you want to come and ask me a question in particular, because I understand that each and every one of you today have got a unique situation. The good news is we will tailor that if you want to with my help, and then we will be able to manage that for you to make it a successful move. But I do obviously also really encourage you to start watching Netflix in French without subtitles, because learning French is going to be a key part of being able to integrate into the society. And then to not being too bored after the sun and the lovely glass of wine and the sunsets have gone down, or the lively snow slopes during the winter times. And of course, integrated in France as being part of the culture. For second homeowners, I know that many of you might plan to fully retire in France at some stage, or maybe make it more permanent, and make sure that therefore you don't burn your bridges with the French system. If there are solutions, try and find those. For those that are thinking about coming back to the UK, maybe closing all of your affairs in the UK is not the best idea. So, you know, think about these things. Don't be scared into choices when people have financial and economic interest in giving you that advice. Yeah, honestly, we have so much business that we don't need to do that, because we provide the best service, the most reliable service out there. And in that context, I'm not wanting to scare you into using our service. You use our service because you want it to be made easy, you want guarantees, you want it to be an inclusive package. So that's what we strive to do. Of course, if you have any questions, please come and see me. It's probably going to be quite busy, so feel free to visit our website and just book a Calendly appointment. You can do that. You can choose which type of video call you want to do with me, my good self. And of course, if you want to come and see me in France, you can. We also have our office there. You can meet all of the people that work for me there, or with me. And we also have our own rental properties, because it's difficult to get a rental contract in France sometimes. So if you want to get a visa before you actually move, you could rent one of our properties. We have very nice finishes and all kinds of sizes. There we go. I'm done. I talked too much. Sorry guys. Thank you very much.